All right, Proposition 11.
Good evening. Proposition 11 has to do with private sector EMTs and paramedics who work on ambulances. And I'll kind of set up some context that'll help for the measure itself. In California, about 3/4 of ambulances are owned and operated by private companies. But in the state, counties are responsible for managing a system in every county for emergency medical response. And so in order to do this, the counties typically contract with one or more private sector ambulance companies to provide responses to 911 emergency medical calls in the county. And in exchange, the private ambulance company has to respond to typically 90% of calls in a certain time frame. Times vary by region, but they're typically 8 or 10 minutes. So there's a time constraint to the contracts that the county and the private ambulance company agree to. And in order to meet these time constraints, private ambulance companies post their ambulances throughout a county, sort of spreading the geography of a county, as opposed to having the ambulances stationed at a central location. This allows them to respond to calls more quickly. And while ambulances are posted, typically there are durations of downtime when a call hasn't come in, and during these durations of downtime, the EMTs and paramedics who are working in the ambulances can take meal and rest breaks per state law. But if a 911 call were to come in, or a call to reposition during, say, a meal break, the EMTs and paramedics immediately respond to that call and typically have wheels rolling, they call it, in 60 seconds. So that meal or rest break can be interrupted by a 911 call, and in this sense is an on-call meal and rest break. In 2016, the state's Supreme Court, in a decision having to do with private security guards, found that these types of on-call rest breaks violate state law. And instead, the employers for the private security guards have to guarantee a rest and meal break that is off-duty and uninterruptible. In this case, most believe that, well, because labor laws that apply to private security guards are very similar to those that apply to EMTs and paramedics, so it's likely that in the near future, this new state Supreme Court ruling will also apply to EMTs and paramedics who work on ambulances, requiring off-duty, uninterrupted breaks. To comply with this requirement, the private ambulance companies would have to put more ambulances into the field to provide coverage, so ambulances could sort of one after the other go and take a break for 30 minutes in this case, while they're off duty and not responding to calls. Statewide, we think complying with that requirement would cost private ambulance companies at least $100 million a year. And these costs would probably, in large part, be passed on to county governments through the contractual agreements that the county has with the ambulance company. Okay, that was the context. Proposition 11 would require that all EMTs and paramedics who work for private ambulance companies remain on call during their rest and meal breaks. So in essence, Proposition 11 separates EMTs and paramedics from the 2016 state Supreme Court decision. The proposition would also seek to limit legal penalties that private ambulance companies may owe in the future having to do with past practice of having these on-call meal and rest breaks. There are several lawsuits currently outstanding in the courts that EMTs and paramedics have brought against their employers alleging labor law violations having to do with these breaks, and Proposition 11 would seek to limit those penalties. Finally, Proposition 11 would require that ambulance companies provide certain mental health care services, provide annual training to their EMTs and paramedics, as well as an annual wellness training program. And in the event that an on-call meal or rest break were interrupted, Proposition 11 requires the ambulance company to either reschedule that break during that same shift or pay the EMT and paramedic 1 hour of premium pay for that lost meal or rest break.
Thank you. So in support, we have the Republican Party and Republican Party groups. In opposition, the Democratic Party and the Libertarian Party, together at last. And in organizations in support, Californians for Emergency Preparedness and Safety, American Medical Response, and then in opposition, we have labor unions. In support, we have most media organizations across the state, but in opposition, we have the San Francisco Chronicle. And then the funding is also extremely lopsided. On this one, it's support, obviously it's the ambulance organizations that are concerned about this, right, that are putting the money towards this and concerned about the cost to them. Questions on Prop 11?
And let me jump in, I forgot the most important part. Our office estimates the fiscal effect for state and local governments would be a benefit, a net benefit in the tens of millions of dollars annually.
That is important, thank you. Yeah. Questions on Prop 11? All right, moving right along.